Welcome to the Folk School on Willow Creek, featuring University Distinguished Professor Tom Easern, singing and telling stories from the Salon on Willow Creek.
I need a bed for the night, boy, and my horses need hay. I've been riding that road line on the hot-ish highway. I am a stern old bachelor, my age is 44. I do declare I'll never live with a woman anymore. Oh, little saw Chanty give to me, for I'm a stern old bachelor from matrimony free. I live upon a homestead claim, from women I am hid. I do not have to dress a wife or take care of a kid. I cook my little dirty bite 3 times or less a day. I lick my plates to keep them clean and just shove things away. Oh, little saw Chanty give to me, for I'm a stern old bachelor from matrimony free. I have a stove that's worth 10 cents and a table worth 15. I cook my grub in an oyster can and to keep my skillet clean. On Sunday morn when I go to church without a wife to storm, my latest paper's not rolled out to beautify her form. Oh, little saw Chanty built for me, for I'm a stern old bachelor from matrimony free. I go to bed whene'er I please, and I get up just the same. I change my socks 3 times a year with no one to complain. And when I die and go to heaven, as all good bachelors do, I will not have to fret for fear my wife won't get there too. Oh, little saw Chanty give to me, for I'm a stern old bachelor from matrimony free. No, we're not on the outs here in the Casa on Willow Creek. It's just a song, folks. It's a ballad. And it's a ballad chosen for a couple of reasons. This ballad appeared for the first time about this time of year. Actually, a week after this, in the year 1887 in Dighton, Kansas. That's out in the western part of the state. And it was written by a bachelor homesteader, as you might guess. He's kind of a character, and that sets a little bit of a theme for the night. The provenance, you might say, that is where they came from, of ballads in human history in general, and the Great Plains in particular. There's been a fair amount of disagreement. Matter of fact, a century ago, they referred to this as the Ballad Wars, that tempest in a teapot when the academics get to fretting over what to say about this body of material. Are ballads the product of an unlettered, primitive people who produce these rude offerings and then they are passed down? Or, as Louise Pound of Nebraska insisted, and you probably know by now she's a bit of a hero of mine in Great Plains balladry and in general, by golly, and I don't want to try to take her one-on-one in hoops either, because she was a great ball player and athlete. She insisted, no, ballads, and this is all theoretical because ballads they were talking about mainly were from the 1600s, but no, they came from individual folk artists, people who were expressing themselves, and then they went into the popular tradition. And, well, on the Great Plains, then, her work had a particular application because the old scholars of balladry says, well, there won't be any more ballads anymore. There are no ballads. We're done with that. Well, about that time, people like Louise Pound, John Lomax, also on the Great Plains, and Southern ballad collectors and Southwestern ballad collectors began coming in and saying, wait a minute, there's ballads all over America here. What do you mean there are no more ballads? And the body of material began to support the idea that ballads came from individual creative artists, not from some misty past and nameless persons. And of course, here in the settlement of the Great Plains, we had newspapers and we had, and for those days, modern communications. And now, with the access we have to those digitally, we discover, oh, yeah, these ballads have authors. Now, there will be some old stuffy folks who think, well, this kind of ruins it, doesn't it? Are they really folklore anymore if you know where they came from? Oh, my goodness. What we're doing is setting them in context and appreciate them even more. And so it's not something just ethereal and theoretical. No, by God, Arthur L. Stokesberry wrote this ballad when he was a bachelor homesteader. And he actually probably cooked it up, but I can't prove this. But sometime, as in 1887, he was between Kingman County in southern Kansas. You're looking at me odd. Kingman County in southern Kansas and Lane County in western Kansas, where he went out at Homestead. Before that, he was a school teacher. Okay, I'm going somewhere with this. He shows up for a teacher institute there in Kingman, Kansas. And they were doing introductions. People would say a little bit about themselves, where they came from. Stokesberry came in from an offside room, dressed in costume with a fiddle under his arm, portraying the Arkansas traveler, and sawed it out on the fiddle. And then it's after this he starts writing ballads. He is Exhibit A, then, of the idea that Great Plains ballads originated from people with a sense of artistry and maybe a little bit of a show-off, right? Oh, you came over to turn on the light, probably, didn't you? No?
I came over so you'd look that way.
You want me to look at the camera? Yeah. Well, at any rate, we got a theme then tonight, and that is ballads came from people, and we can discover now from specific people, and then they go into traditional channels. And those people are kind of interesting when you get to know them, like Arthur Stokesberry, portraying the Arkansas traveler to his fellow teachers and cracking him up. And he became just notorious. You know, he'd show up at the meetings and, oh, Stokesberry got a poem this week. Let's hear it. And that sort of thing. And that's how ballads are generated. And speaking of generating literature, are we generating anything out of NDSU Press these days?
We are. I'm going to share some behind the scenes stuff that we do today. So if you'd hold up that first piece. Yeah, this is what's called an advance review copy. This is a novel that we're working on.
Well, it looks pretty clean.
Good. Well, we look at it a little more closely than you just did. This is a first, or I should say almost last look at a book before it goes to the real printing.
Oh yeah, it says proof up in the corner.
It says proof, and across the back it says uncorrected proof. So this gives us a chance to see the book in its form, make sure everything's appearing like it's supposed to. And for fiction books, we send these advanced review copies out to reviewers. So they see it. If we were on top of our game, they'd see it about 6 months before the book came out. We do pretty well to get it out about 6 weeks before the book comes out.
You're on the just-in-time principle. Yes.
Yeah, just in time. But we send those out for reviewers to take a look at while we're marking them up at home, just to make sure that they're okay. Then the last step
Looking for this?
Final printing. Yeah. This is called a proof, and it comes from the printer. They prepare this text for us, and if you can hold it up there, you might be able to see the cut lines around about an inch inside the page that Tom's showing.
Yeah.
That's where the pages will be cut, so it gives us a chance to make sure that nothing bleeds over into an area that might get cut off. But it's also how it's going to look when it's printed, and this gives us our very last chance to take a look at it. So we approve this proof, and then the printer machines start running. So what Tom is holding is the interior. This one, they've sort of bound it, they've glued a binding onto it, but often it will come to us just as loose pages in a big rubber band. So this is how we look at it as a proof copy.
The last going through.
Right, and then the cover, because it's in color, whereas the interior is black and white, the color comes on another sheet, and this we can have an opportunity to make sure that the colors are looking as we thought they would. So it's not just to check text and alignments and those sort of things, but we want to make sure the color is right too.
And this is the shawl work on the Turtle Mountain Chippewa.
Correct.
In order that justice may be done. This will be a landmark book.
I hope it will be. It should be.
It's also kind of a beast of a book. I mean, it's like a Labrador Retriever. When it enters the room, it takes up some room.
Well, it does, yes. But it's been approved. The printers are printing it. They have an anticipated date of July 25th that they'll ship it to us. So this is going to go up now on Amazon and our online stores with Ingram. We'll get it all set in place and people can start making their pre-sale orders.
And preferably order direct from NDSU Press at ndsUpress.org, am I right?
That'd be terrific, yes. Well, this is just a little piece of introduction to publishing. These are the kind of things that I share with my students so they see what happens if they're working in the publishing industry.
Cool.
I'm going to share one more thing too.
Shoot.
I've mentioned before that Denise Lajemodier has been appointed as North Dakota's Poet Laureate. We have arranged for 2 coach buses, one departing from Fargo and one departing from Bismarck. So any of our North Dakota or near environs friends who want to go celebrate with her on July 27, we have a free ride. You just have to reserve your seat. It is limited seating. There's only about, I think it's 56 seats on each bus, and we're already filling them up.
Contact
me. Just go to ndsu.press@ndsu.edu, and I'll send you
No,
a
go
seat.
to you. Email that address.
Yeah,
That's an email address you gave.
That is the email address.
ndsu.press.
@ndsu.edu.
Yep.
And I'll save your seat. That's it.
All right. I'm packing a lunch.
You don't need to pack a lunch. Lunch is provided.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm packing a beagle.
No.
Let's talk about another balladeer of the Plains then. Another personage who left us wealth untold. And, Stokesberry is completely unknown until 2 years ago. We unearthed him in the course of researching that ballad, Stern Old Bachelor, or the Bachelor song, sometimes called the Kansas Bachelor song, which other songcatcher would pick up out of the air, but we got the real goods, the original text from 1887 and set it in context, got his homestead records, and a whole write-up on Stokesberry and his ballad should be published in Kansas History, the historical journal, over the coming year. Here's an even more obscure balladeer of the Great Plains, who I mentioned a couple weeks ago, Ninette Lowater. And I think I said that she was, as a teenager, she's from Connecticut originally, but come to Wisconsin in 1859 with a family. She, after the Civil War, she married a returning soldier, Harrison Lowater, and living a semi-genteel life, she became a poet of some note and was publishing in national newspapers and magazine. Then in 1916, her husband passed away. And at that point, she went to live with a daughter. Now, new information on Ms. Lowater. Her daughter, let's see, I got it. Her daughter, give me a break. Yeah, her daughter, maybe it was her regular name to distinguish from her mother, or maybe it's just a little garbled in the census. Her daughter went by the name of Ninette, Nineth, not Ninette. Ninette Lowater Well, I find her in the 1910 census for Emmons County, North Dakota, where she had come out. She was 32 years old in 1910, and she was living with a family there named Grogan. Yeah, Grogan. And why is she a single woman? She's living with them. You probably guessed already. She's a country school teacher, and she was boarding with a school board member, you see. It says occupation, teacher, industry, common school. Yeah. So she's boarding with this family named Grogan. Mrs. Lowater, her mother, did come out and visit at some point. And then she came out to stay after her husband passed away. And I find her then in the 1920 census. That's Ninette, the poet and balladeer. Find her there in 1920, living with her daughter, listed in this case as Nina. So name varies a little bit in the census as you see it, but this is age matches. This is her daughter, and she's married to William Grogan. So she married into that family she was boarding with as a teacher, and they lived on a homestead. Those of you those of you familiar with Emmons County, North Dakota, I know some of you are. It was a homestead north of Beaver Creek, east of Linton, and a couple miles north of Beaver Creek. And there, she took up writing poetry again and became charmed with the country and with watching the agricultural operations, and penned what I'm about to present to you, a poem which I've set to a tune which is stolen and morphed a little bit, under the heading On a Dakota Prairie. So keep in mind, this is a Connecticut woman by way of Wisconsin, moved here, sort of perhaps a last recourse, or perhaps just her preference to come live with her daughter after her husband, a widow woman, come out to North Dakota and seeing the developing country. Now, I will say this is the 19-teens. This poem appeared in the local paper in 1919. It's a new country at that time. Most of Emmons County was being homesteaded up during the first decade of the 20th century. So this is barely post-frontier, as she writes, but it's clearly an agricultural, productive landscape she's writing about. But I've referred to her as the Wordsworth of North Dakota because of her affinity for nature. On a Dakota Prairie, Ninette Lowater, Emmons County, 1919. Midsummer rest upon the level plain, the grain fields reach and melt into the sky, dancing and rippling as the wind sweeps by, as dance the waters of upon this northern land, the glory of long day and lucid light, when not a cloud obscures the perfect night, when man is far, God seems near at hand. They who know well these days of pearl and rose count them full girding for the winter snows. Midsummer rest upon the level plain, but rain fields reach and melt into the sky. Truly a forgotten poet of the northern plains. But if we have anything to say about it, no longer forgotten. Ninette Lowater, 1919. My word, you had a sense of the place, don't you think, Dr. K? A recent arrival. Sometimes it takes a recent arrival to notice things, and she did. And speaking of, and that poem came out in midsummer, in July, about this time in July. I imagine wheat, spring wheat, at about the stage we see it here now, because our wheat's not early this year. We had those late snowstorms, snow hanging around into May. And so I imagine the wheat waving then as it is now, just enough that it gets a good ripple in the wind. That appeal to her. And thank God there are a few meadowlarks still around our place here in Cass County, North Dakota. I'll put a plug in again for Heritage Trails, the Facebook group that my research center, the Center for Heritage Renewal, operates. Facebook Trails tends to make note of stuff that's going on for people who are heritage-minded, looking out to get into the landscape, into the land and its people. And I want to point out that tomorrow and Sunday is Sodbuster Days at Fort Ransom State Park in the beautiful Cheyenne River Valley. Fort Ransom Park hosting Summer Sodbuster Days, July 8th to 9th. What's going on? A lot of demonstrations of living history stuff. Wheelwrights. Well, I guess they're going to have a parade, but that's going to be of antique machinery and that sort of stuff. I'd be interested. They're going to be I've seen this before, of course. They're going to be setting up a horsepower and threshing by horsepower. If you haven't seen that is kind of interesting, when you've got a central threshing machine and it's powered by a tumbling rod that runs out from that. Horses go around and around it, and they have to step over that rod every time they come to it. They must be used to it, or they'd surely be spooked by that thing rattling around under their hooves. Old-time haying demonstration, raking, pitching, stacking. I know there's some other stuff on my list there. It's a full day of stuff. And Heritage Trails, you can find this and other stuff on it. And if that sort of thing piques your interest, we are just starting the season for threshing bees. This is all over the Great Plains, in some parts of the country, other parts of the country too. Where I tell you, it's a guy thing, but there's more and more granddaughters. See, I think it skipped a generation. So you got these old guys in overalls, and their granddaughters are showing up out there in overalls also. and learning how to run steam traction engines. So you probably know what I'm talking about here, where they get the bundles out and thresh. That's going to be happening on the 14th through the 15th of July at Crosby, the Divide County Threshing and Antique Show. I could dig that one too, but we're not driving all the way to Divide County. But it's worth a good drive to get in an operation like that. We tend to get out to the Braddock Show every year. And finally, I'll draw your attention to, you might think, you might occasionally go to the state fair. Want to go upstream of that? You get a little closer to the grassroots. Try a county fair, like the Tri-County Fair coming up on the 15th and 16th in Wishick for Emmons, Logan, and McIntosh counties. That's that one where they bought their own carnival stuff so they can run their own booths and rides, kind of, they look almost primitive, the rides that they're operating out there. But they got their own rig because it's often hard to get a carnival for a fair out on the prairies. That same weekend, the Hettinger County Fair will be going on in one of our favorite towns, Mott, North Dakota. I encourage people to get into the livestock showing activities there. Partly because you're mostly going to be impressed at young people doing responsible and competent things right there in front of you. And then occasionally you're going to be laughing out loud because something always goes crazy, especially with pigs. I got to tell you, people showing pigs. Well, at any rate, summer only happens, for a slice of life here in the Northern Plains. We pack a lot of stuff into it around here. What else should we be talking about at this point, Dr. K? Anybody visiting us on the chat line?
Indeed. Denise Lajmodir, who I mentioned just a little bit ago, says aloha from Hawaii.
Oh, poor baby.
I know. Well, she needs to build up her strength again. She takes on a lot of really tough topics and things throughout the year, and this gives her some time for pause. So, good on her. Nancy Kelly notices a pretty shirt, Professor.
Okay.
Well, it's kind of nice. He made a debut and it got noticed. Now I'm going to mention too, Ben Kabishta says he went to North Dakota State School of Science, and while he was there, he observed that there were students learning about the printing, how to do all the newspaper printing and all that. Well, I've met some of the fellows who went to that school, but nobody had mentioned this before. Ben says they used to have a Miss Perfect type selected out there. That sounds great to me. Perfect.
She's just my type. That sort of thing.
Well, I'll follow up with the people that I've been working with, because I just haven't mentioned this part of their program out there.
Well, happy everybody's dropped in to be with us this evening. Taking it fairly easy. We're into summer mode around here. We're working every day, particularly Dr. K, but we're both turning out a little bit of work every day. But there's also a garden out there, and I don't know how many quarts of June berries we have out there. What do you reckon?
I don't know if you should be passing that news.
Yeah, don't tell Denise, right?
Well, we'll share some with Denise.
She's worse than the robins and the waxwing. She descends on those June berries. Yeah.
She's been out here picking them before.
Yeah. I don't know. There's 30-some quarts that got put up down there and still working on it. Which is wealth untold, right? Yeah. These poets, they do dig into the land. They root and they write. Probably the best known balladeer of the Great Plains is Woodrow Wilson Guthrie. Woody Guthrie. 4th of July, commonly we sing, "This land is your land, this land is my land." A Woody Guthrie song with some ambivalence and controversy around it. In April, we always sing The Great Dust Storm, or Dust Bowl Disaster, it's sometimes called, about the Great Dust Storm of April 14th, 1935. Guthrie, see, old-time folklorists might wonder, oh, is he really a folk singer? This has been examined, and his method really is that of a folk singer. It's just that he's not some tribal type like they imagined in the 1600s in England and Scotland. He is a modern Great Plains folk singer and balladeer, writing the experiences of the people in his own time. And the verdict is in that people accepted the narratives that he put into the ballads. Born in Okemah, Oklahoma. Next Friday will be his birthday, but he was born in 1912. We're observing things about a week early in some cases here, some of these anniversaries this week. And why is that, Dr. K?
What?
Why are we celebrating thumb things a little bit early this week?
Because we might not be here next
Yeah,
week.
not guaranteeing we're going to be here for the folk school next week. We're hoping for the arrival of our first great-grandchild. There are some disputes about naming rights. I'm a fan of Badger Clark, the South Dakota poet, and I always thought Badger would be a great boy's name. I've had other ones I've suggested, T-Bone, and nobody liked any of my suggestions.
Badger got the closest.
It's getting some play,
Yeah.
but, it's not going to make the final cut. But I've pointed out to the parties involved in the naming proposition that you've noticed all these grandkids, I call them whatever I want to call them anyway. So you go, there'll be a birth certificate name, and it'll be what they get called off on the roster in school. But you come to the Casa on Willow Creek, you'll be answering to Badger, boy. And he probably will, because Dr. Kelly will be cooking. What song to talk about then? This balladeer of the Great Plains and rooting in the place. I think it's got to be Oklahoma Hills. Now, Home on the Range, of course, has been named the state song of Kansas back in the 1940s. Talked about that on the anniversary of that designation here a couple of weeks ago. Oklahoma Hills, I'm looking at Oklahoma Statutes 25-94.8, state folk song. The official Oklahoma state folk song is hereby declared to be the words and music of the song Oklahoma Hills, composed and written by Woody Guthrie and Jack Guthrie. Now, what's the deal with that? Woody was out in California already, having come from eastern Oklahoma, experienced the Dust Bowl in the Texas Panhandle, made the trek to California in seek of, if not fortune, survival, was singing on the radio, and had something of a name. And in 1937, he wrote the song Oklahoma Hills. I cannot find an original text from 1937. If you got one, let me know. I suspect the Morgan Library in New York got a text, but I can't tell from the finding aid. Well, but the designated state folk song is as written and sung by Woody Guthrie and Jack Guthrie. Well, that's his cousin. We've got a little bit of a checkered career and life and character. But at the time, in 1945, he was making his living as a Western swing artist. And he then took Woody's song, Oklahoma Hills, massaged it a little bit, and I do not know the extent of changes, and that has become the accepted text. Now, this might surprise you. For those of you who are students of Oklahoma public affairs, the legislature screwed this thing up. Because I've got here the copyright text of Woody Guthrie and Jack Guthrie's Oklahoma Hills from 1945, and the words they've got down here in the statute book depart from those, usually in the direction of deterioration of grammar and structure. I don't know who was responsible for transcribing the thing and who just thought maybe they could do better than the Guthries did in it, but they've screwed it up. I'm going to sing from the 1945 text I've got here. Yeah. Oh. I was going to mention, there was something to mention here. You had to hang on, I find that sheet. There it is. Okay, little bitty image there. Little image of Woody Guthrie. That is his painting with the cigarette hanging out of the right-hand corner of his mouth there. See, all right? That's Woody. His portrait hanging in the Oklahoma Capitol. By God, there's a communist hanging in the Oklahoma Capitol. Huh? Woody Guthrie, right there. And there he is. And this is, the artist, of course, is Charles Banks Wilson. A great Oklahoma artist, a great American artist. He was commissioned to do Woody Guthrie for the Capitol there. Yeah, it's a beautiful portrait. I happen to have a Charles Banks Wilson litho. I'm not sure if it's going to glare, whether you can make anything out of it or not. Can you see anything of it on there, Dr. K?
No, the screen hasn't caught up with you yet.
You're in the lag?
Yeah.
You got the jet lag going on?
Oh, it's working.
Oh, yeah, okay. If you don't recognize this personage, this, of course, is another great Oklahoman, Will Rogers, the Cherokee cowboy, the great humorist, and a wise man. How do I come by a beautiful litho like this? Well, this was a graduation gift from my dear old cousin, Bernice Eastman. I can tell you stories from and about cousin Bernice, including the time she went out to study with Thomas Hart Benton in Missouri, but perhaps another time for that. That's a good one. But I just had to get my Charles Banks with Wilson now. He hangs on the stairway right next to the burger's son Zane, for those of you who are acquainted with San Zane's work, another great regionalist. Oklahoma Hills. Many months have come and gone since I walked from my home in the Oklahoma hills where I was born. Many page of life has turned, many bridges I have burned, but I feel like in those hills I still belong. Way down yonder in the Indian Nation, on my pony on the reservation in the Oklahoma hills where I was born. Way down yonder in the Indian Nation, cowboy life is my occupation in the Oklahoma hills where I was born. But as I sit here today, I'm so many miles away from the place where I led my pony through the draw, where the oak and blackjack trees kiss the faithful prairie breeze, and the Oklahoma hills where I was born. Way down yonder in the Indian Nation, I rode my pony on the reservation in the Oklahoma hills where I was born. Way down yonder in the Indian Nation, cowboy life was my occupation in the Oklahoma hills where I was born. Now I turn life back a page to the land of the great Osage in the Oklahoma hills where I was born, where the black oil rolls and flows and the snow white cotton grows in the Oklahoma hills where I was born. Way down yonder in the Indian Nation, I rode my pony on the reservation in the Oklahoma hills where I was born. Way down yonder in the Indian Nation, cowboy life was my occupation in the Oklahoma hills where I was born. In the Oklahoma hills where I was born. Well, John and Malvina, that's for you. And anybody else who cares about Oklahoma or the prairies. Got a calendar ballad this week. You know, that little ritual of coming up with something original and perhaps in the chord of the theme of the week, or sometimes just what's going on outside our window in the fields around us or somewhere on the prairies. And I've called this the Ballad of Ballads because it's part of this tribute to those people who have left us this legacy that we've sung for years, but now can rediscover the particulars of, along with a whole lot of great ballads that had their day in the past, were lost, and now are back. So I'm calling this the Ballad of Ballads. Little old sod shanty home on the range, not a single stanza would I exchange for your sonata or your symphony. Oh, bury me on the lone prairie. Oh, bury me on the lone prairie. Settle up the country, make a community. It's all a mystery how this would be, but the ballad maker, he did aspire to solve the riddle, taking up the lyre. Little old sod shanty home on the range, not a single stanza would I exchange for your sonata or your symphony. Oh, bury me on the lone prairie. Arthur L. Stokesberry had a comic charm, liked to make an entrance, fiddle under his arm. Yes, the stern old bachelor swore to live apart, but the Arkansawyer had a poet's heart. Little old sod shanty home on the range, not a single stanza would I exchange for your sonata or your symphony. Oh, bury me on the lone prairie. Bury me on the lone prairie. Woodrow Wilson Guthrie of Dust Bowl fame sang the songs of the country from which he came, from the Blackjack Hills to the salty brine. This land is your land, this land is mine. Little old sod shanty home on the range, not a single stanza would I exchange for your sonata or your symphony. Oh, bury me on the lone prairie. Oh, bury me on the lone prairie. Oh, bury me seldom is heard a discouraging word. And the skies are not cloudy, are not cloudy all the day. No, the skies are not cloudy all day. Dr. Kelly.
We now conclude today's edition of the Folk School on Willow Creek. We invite you to join us again next Friday at 8 p.m. Central Time for more songs and stories.